Archaeological finds show that what is now Liechtenstein has been inhabited by humans since the Paleolithic age. The earliest traces of human settlement date back to around 7,000 to 9,000 years ago, when hunter-gatherers roamed the area. Stone tools and weapons found in caves and sheltered places testify to their presence, and during the Neolithic period, about 5,000 to 2,000 years before our era, settled farmers began to settle the area. They built permanent settlements, practiced agriculture, and kept livestock. Archaeological excavations have unearthed remains of pottery, weapons, and jewelry, indicating trade relations with neighboring regions, and settlement increased further during the Bronze Age between 2200 and 800 BC. Bronze tools, burial sites, and settlement remains prove that people increasingly settled and developed in certain areas, and the location of present-day Liechtenstein in the Alps made it an important transit area for trade routes, especially for the exchange of raw materials such as copper and salt. From 800 BC onwards, the Iron Age brought Celtic tribes to the region, especially the Radians, who are considered one of the oldest traceable peoples of Liechtenstein. This early settlement laid the foundations for the later development of the region and shows that Liechtenstein had an important history long before the emergence of modern states. Roman rule. In antiquity, especially between the 1st century BC and the 5th century AD, the area that is now Liechtenstein was part of the Roman Empire. At the time, it was part of the province of Rhoetia, which today encompasses southern Germany, Switzerland, and western Austria, and the region benefited significantly from Roman rule, especially through the introduction of modern infrastructure and integration into the Roman trading system. The Romans built an extensive road network that facilitated trade and communication in the areas they conquered. An important Roman road, the Via Claudia Augusta, ran from northern Italy through present-day Austria to Bavaria, near present-day Liechtenstein, connecting important Roman settlements and contributing to the economic development of the region. The roads facilitated not only the transportation of goods but also the exchange of culture and ideas, making the region a center of Roman civilization. Archaeological finds from this period, such as coins, pottery, and weapons, attest to the presence of the Romans in the region, and finds from Roman settlements are particularly noteworthy as they indicate a small but vibrant Roman population. Situated on the most important trade routes, these settlements contributed to the further development of the region and left a lasting impact on the local culture. Roman rule brought the people of Liechtenstein not only material prosperity, but also Roman law, architecture, and a new social order. In the 5th century, with the fall of the Western Roman Empire, Roman rule in the region came to an end. However, traces of the Roman period can still be found today in the form of the remains of streets, buildings, and monuments that testify to an important period in the history of what is now Liechtenstein. Medieval dominions. In the Middle Ages, the area that is now Liechtenstein belonged to various political dominions, the two most important of which were characterized by regional noble families, such as the County of Vaduz and the Lordship of Schellenberg, each ruled by different rulers. These mountainous lands were part of the Holy Roman Empire at the time and played an important role in the feudal structure of the region. The County of Vaduz, located in the east of today's Liechtenstein, was originally a fief of the Prince-Bishopric of Schur, but during the Middle Ages, Vaduz was owned and controlled by various noble families. The county was transferred from the Lords of Württemberg to the Prince-Bishopric of Schur in 1209 and continued to develop as an important regionally administered entity. The County of Vaduz was a central region for agricultural production and small settlements and was part of the feudal administrative network in the Alpine region. The Lordship of Schellenberg, in the west of present-day Liechtenstein, was another important region that played a role throughout the Middle Ages. The Lordship of Schellenberg was particularly known for its strategic location, which made it an important point for trade and communication between neighboring regions of the Holy Roman Empire. It was initially ruled by the Lords of Schellenberg, a family that secured its power in the region through military and political alliances, and was characterized by the interaction between the local nobility and the overarching political and religious structures of the empire. Acquisition by the House of Liechtenstein. In 1699, Prince Johann Adam Layt of Liechtenstein acquired the Lordship of Schellenberg, followed by the County of Vaduz in 1712. This acquisition was part of the political and territorial ambitions of the House of Liechtenstein to acquire important territorial possessions in the Holy Roman Empire. By then, the House of Liechtenstein was already a respected family with great influence in the empire. The negotiations for the purchase and the subsequent unification of the two territories, the County of Vaduz and the Lordship of Schellenberg, were a strategic move to create a solid foundation for the family, and established the region as an independent political player within the empire. These two territories had previously belonged to different dominions and were now united under the control of the Liechtensteins, paving the way for the subsequent establishment of the principality. The acquisition of the counties of Vaduz and Schellenberg by the House of Liechtenstein in the early 18th century not only enabled Prince Johann Adama Erz to expand his political influence in the Holy Roman Empire, but also laid the foundations for the status and autonomy of the principality. These acquisitions were officially recognized by Emperor Charles VI in a document, which led to the elevation of the United Territories to an independent imperial principality in 1719, and the acquisition by the House of Liechtenstein was a turning point in the history of the principality, as it placed the dynasty in a key position within the Holy Roman Empire, and at the same time distinguished it from other influential noble families. With the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire in 1806, the Principality of Liechtenstein joined the Confederation of the Rhine and gained full sovereignty. The Confederation of the Rhine was a union of German states founded under the influence of Napoleon Bonaparte, and represented a reorganization of the political structure in Central Europe, which meant a significant political change for Liechtenstein, as it was no longer part of the Holy Roman Empire, but could now act as a sovereign state within Napoleon's new system. Joining the Confederation of the Rhine gave Liechtenstein a broad independence and political autonomy that it had not previously enjoyed fully within the Holy Roman Empire. Although the principality was now part of a loose system of states under French influence, it was still able to exercise internal self-government and retain control over its own affairs. And membership of the Confederation of the Rhine played a decisive role in Liechtenstein maintaining its status as an independent state. Despite the political changes brought about by the Napoleonic Wars and the restructuring of Europe in the early 19th century, Liechtenstein remained largely stable in its development as an independent state thanks to this sovereignty, and membership of the Confederation of the Rhine and the associated sovereignty contributed to the further modernization of the principality, as the new political context meant that it increasingly had to interact with the major European powers. The Congress of Vienna in 1815 was a decisive moment in Liechtenstein's history, as it was here that the independence of the principality was finally confirmed. In the aftermath of the Napoleonic Wars and the reshaping of the political map of Europe, a new European equilibrium was established in Vienna. The reorganization of European states was discussed at the Congress of Vienna, and Liechtenstein's situation was also taken into account in this context. Although part of the Confederation of the Rhine under Napoleon, Liechtenstein remained a small but independent state. Its independence was recognized at the Congress of Vienna, and the principality's status as a sovereign state confirmed its right to exist in the new European system. Another important development was the admission of Liechtenstein into the German Confederation, which was established in 1915 as a loose union of German states. The German Confederation served as a kind of loose, federal organization, coordinating the political and military interests of the German states. Through its membership in the German Confederation, Liechtenstein was able to maintain its neutrality and assert itself in a more stable political environment, but in many respects it remained a self-governing principality and was not directly involved in the military and political conflicts of the Confederation. The confirmation of its independence by the Congress of Vienna and its membership in the German Confederation ensured Liechtenstein's continued existence and laid the foundations for its development in the first half of the 19th century. In 1818, Prince Johann I of Liechtenstein granted the principality a constitution, which represented an important step towards political modernization and collective decision-making. It was an important document that granted the Landtag, the representation of the estates, some co-determination rights. The state constitution was a compromise between the authoritarian rule of the principality and the popular desire for more political participation. Before the introduction of the constitution, Liechtenstein was an absolutist principality in which the prince's decisions were largely unlimited. The 1818 constitution created for the first time an institution that supported the prince in his governmental activities and acted in an advisory capacity on certain issues, by stipulating that the Landtag should be composed of representatives of aristocratic families as well as urban and rural communities. The constitution ensured the participation of citizens and the aristocracy in political decisions, even though the prince's power remained dominant. The Landständische Verfassung of 1818 was a step towards a more constitutional government, but under the prince's leadership Liechtenstein remained an authoritarian principality, where political power was largely in the hands of the ruling family. Nevertheless, The document marked the beginning of a political development that would later lead to further reforms and a more modern state order. And the 1818 constitution characterized Liechtenstein's political structure until the promulgation of a new, much more democratically designed constitution in 1921 after the First World War. In 1862, Prince Johann II von Liechtenstein introduced a new constitution, which represented an important step towards a constitutional monarchy and put the political system of the principality on a new basis, transforming the country from an absolutist monarchy into a constitutional form of government. The most important difference from previous constitutions was that the prince's power was now limited by a constitutional framework, and a fundamental element of political participation was created. An important aspect of the 1862 constitution was the expansion of the rights of the Diet, which gave it a more important role in the political life of the country, and, as an elected parliament, the Diet now had more powers, which allowed it to exert more influence in political matters. In particular, Parliament was given the right to have a say on important issues such as legislation, finance, and government policy. This was a clear improvement over the previous constitution of 1818, which gave Parliament only limited rights. But despite the introduction of a constitutional constitution, Prince John II retained strong control over the country. The 1862 constitution strengthened the role of the Diet and the citizens, but the prince remained the main actor in the political governance of Liechtenstein. The constitution was a compromise that confirmed the prince's position of power, while at the same time allowing for greater influence and participation of citizens and political institutions. This constitution provided an important impetus for the political development of Liechtenstein and laid the foundation for reforms that further democratized the political system of the principality in the following years. This constitution was a turning point in Liechtenstein's transformation into a modern state that meets the needs of a changing society. Termination of the customs agreement with Austria. After the end of the First World War and the collapse of the Austro-Hungarian monarchy, Liechtenstein was forced to terminate the existing customs agreement with Austria. This agreement, which had regulated economic relations between the two countries since 1852, was no longer valid after the war because Austria had suffered significant territorial and economic losses as a result of the war. The loss of the common market and exemption from customs duties made it necessary for Liechtenstein to find new economic partnerships to secure its economic stability and development. The termination of the customs agreement with Austria posed a major challenge for Liechtenstein, which no longer had close economic ties with its neighbor. To mitigate the economic impact, the principality looked for new trading partners and began to conclude bilateral agreements with other countries and trading zones. Switzerland became a particularly important partner during this period, and in 1923, Liechtenstein signed a customs agreement with Switzerland that laid the foundation for economic relations between the two countries. This agreement not only provided Liechtenstein with economic advantages, but also brought greater integration into Switzerland's economic structures. The termination of the customs agreement was a defining moment in Liechtenstein's history as it enabled the country to develop a more independent economic identity. It also helped lay the foundations for later cooperation with Switzerland and other international partners, which was vital for Liechtenstein's economic development in the 20th century. It was of decisive importance in the 20th century. Despite the difficult early years, the principality managed to successfully adapt and establish itself as a stable and prosperous economic partner in Europe. The customs agreement signed between Liechtenstein and Switzerland in 1923 was an important step for the small principality to secure its economic independence and stability. The agreement with Switzerland not only gave Liechtenstein free access to the Swiss market, but also established close economic and monetary ties with the neighboring country. Switzerland effectively assumed responsibility for Liechtenstein's monetary policy by making the Swiss franc the official currency of the principality. This was a decision that provided Liechtenstein with stability and security in the international financial sphere and protected it from the economic turmoil of the time. The customs agreement with Switzerland laid the foundations for a deep economic exchange between the two countries and contributed to the creation of a common market. Products from Liechtenstein could now enter the Swiss market duty-free, which increased the competitiveness of the principality. In addition, Liechtenstein was able to benefit from the strong and stable Swiss economy while developing its own industries and businesses. This agreement was very important for Liechtenstein because it not only brought economic benefits to the country, but also strengthened its geopolitical position in Europe. Thanks to its close ties with Switzerland, Liechtenstein was able to integrate into international trade without being exposed to the political and economic uncertainties that followed the First World War. Relations between Liechtenstein and Switzerland have remained close ever since, and remain of great importance for the economic development of the principality today. During the Second World War, Liechtenstein pursued a policy of neutrality, which allowed the country to largely escape the direct effects of the war. Although the principality was geographically located in the heart of Europe and surrounded by belligerent powers, it was able to maintain its independence and neutrality by staying completely out of military conflicts. Liechtenstein did everything in its power to maintain its neutrality, mainly because the country had neither military ambitions nor an army of its own. This allowed the principality to avoid becoming the focus of warring parties, either as a strategic objective or as part of hostilities. At the same time, Liechtenstein endeavored to maintain diplomatic relations with all countries involved in the war in order to consolidate its position as a neutral country. One particularly noteworthy aspect of Liechtenstein's neutrality during the Second World War was its role in dealing with refugees. The small country took in many people fleeing the horrors of war. In particular, Jewish refugees fleeing persecution and extermination by National Socialist Germany sought refuge in Liechtenstein. The principality offered them a safe haven, albeit with a limited capacity. However, the reception of refugees was not always easy. Liechtenstein was a small country with limited resources and a small population. Nevertheless, during the war, the principality demonstrated its humanitarian attitude towards the victims of war and persecution, even though in many cases it was subject to international political pressure. The decision to grant asylum to refugees was one of the moral high points of Liechtenstein's neutrality during the Second World War, and demonstrated the country's humanitarian responsibility at a time when many other states were hesitant or refused to accept refugees. At the end of the Second World War, when most of the neighboring countries were severely affected by the consequences of the war, Liechtenstein was one of the few European countries to emerge from the conflict largely unscathed thanks to its independence and neutrality. In 1978, Liechtenstein joined the Council of Europe, an international organization dedicated to protecting human rights, promoting democracy, and upholding the rule of law in Europe. This step marked an important turning point in the Principality's foreign policy and underlined its efforts to integrate itself more closely into European and international structures. Joining the Council of Europe was an opportunity for Liechtenstein to play an active role in Europe's political and legal environment, particularly in areas such as human rights and democracy, which are among the Council of Europe's core objectives. Membership has allowed Liechtenstein not only to raise its voice in important international debates, but also to benefit from the normative standards of the Council of Europe, which has helped it to develop its own legal and institutional framework. For Liechtenstein, this step was also part of a broader strategy to position itself more strongly at the international level and increase its influence on European affairs. The Council of Europe was the first major European organization that Liechtenstein joined, and this step helped raise the country's profile in the international community. It also created new opportunities for the Principality to cooperate with other European states in various political, social, and cultural fields. Furthermore, by joining the Council of Europe, Liechtenstein reaffirmed its commitment to the principles of universal human rights and support for the rule of law, which are important for the country's political identity. This demonstrated that Liechtenstein is taking a responsible and democratic stance, not only nationally, but also internationally. Accession to the Council of Europe has played a key role in further consolidating confidence in Liechtenstein as a stable and committed partner in Europe. UN membership. In 1990, the Principality of Liechtenstein took an important step in its foreign policy by joining the United Nations. UN membership strengthened Liechtenstein's international presence and opened new doors for the country to actively participate in global debates and decision-making processes. For Liechtenstein, joining the United Nations was not only a recognition of its sovereignty on the world stage, but also a confirmation of its commitment to promote international peace, human rights, and the rule of law. Liechtenstein had already established its position as a neutral state and a reliable partner in international affairs. But UN membership enabled the country to raise its voice in key international bodies and contribute to solving global challenges, especially in the areas of humanitarian aid, peacekeeping, and the development of international law. The small principality was able to play an active role and set important trends. The decision to join the United Nations was also a strategic step towards further internationalization of the country. UN membership gave Liechtenstein the opportunity to participate in important political, social, and economic issues and to consolidate its position as a responsible player in the international community. The country has not only benefited from cooperation with other states, but has also been able to draw on the UN's resources and expertise in various fields. A particularly noteworthy aspect of Liechtenstein's UN membership is its role as a defender of international law. The principality has consistently worked to strengthen international justice and support measures to maintain international peace and security. Liechtenstein has also played an active role in promoting human rights and combating poverty and inequality by supporting numerous resolutions and initiatives within the United Nations. Overall, accession to the UN was an important step in Liechtenstein's history and helped further establish the country as a global partner on important international issues. In 2019, the Principality of Liechtenstein celebrated an important anniversary, its 300th year as a principality. Marking a milestone in the country's history, the celebrations led to numerous events, exhibitions, and projects honoring both historical and modern aspects of the principality. The principality was founded in 1719 when Emperor Charles VI united the counties of Vaduz and Schellenberg to form the Imperial Principality of Liechtenstein. This anniversary was not only a glimpse into the historical development of the country, but also an opportunity to celebrate Liechtenstein's achievements and its importance in today's world. Numerous cultural and educational initiatives were launched as part of the 300th anniversary celebrations. Of particular note was a comprehensive exhibition on the history of the principality, examining its development from a small dominion of the Holy Roman Empire to a modern, independent, and internationally recognized state. Exhibited in various parts of the country, it attracted both locals and visitors from abroad and provided an in-depth look at the cultural, political, and social changes in Liechtenstein over the centuries. Alongside the exhibitions, numerous events were organized, including concerts, theatrical performances, and festive ceremonies. Particularly popular were the festivities organized in the capital Vaduz and other towns and municipalities. These offered citizens and guests the opportunity to experience and honor the country's cultural heritage. The 300th anniversary celebrations were also an opportunity to highlight Liechtenstein's role in the modern world. Despite its size, the country has played an important role in the international context as a financial center, a pioneer in sustainability, and an active participant in international organizations. The anniversary was therefore an opportunity not only to look back, but also to look forward and present the country as a modern and globally oriented player. Liechtenstein's 300th anniversary has thus become an important symbol of stability, success, and further development at both national and international level.